show.
Welcome to episode 125 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The Toronto Maple Leafs are not very good right now. I know their record is 11-6-3. But they have just 5 regulation wins in 20 games this season. That ranks 27th in the NHL. There are several issues with this team right now. And we are going to get into everything that's going on with the Leafs. Because, like I said, even though their record is solid, they're not playing that well. So we are going to give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that has gone down with the Leafs since our last podcast. We're also going to talk about Corey Perry and his contract getting terminated by the Chicago Blackhawks. We will also touch on Patrick Kane signing with the Detroit Red Wings. So we have a lot to get into, and I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, doing very well. Episode 125. Nice round number today. I'm a little down, Bruno. Just got back from the rink. My kids lost a hard-fought game to a good team. It was close. They gave it their all. But I wish I would have some jive in my step approaching the podcast today after a big win. But unfortunately, like the Leafs, was left disappointed. What can I say?
Instead of hiring the same 55-year-old head coaches all the time, I think Michael Lepore should be in the running for the next head coaching job in the NHL. Look at this guy, eh?
Yeah, it's typically how it goes, right? Like you're coaching 11-year-olds and then it's bam, you're into the show just like that.
That's natural progression.
Yeah, a bottom like 500 team of 11-year-olds to boot. So someone's really going to take notice, I'm sure.
You're getting there, Lepore. You're getting there, man.
I can run a practice. I'll give myself credit with that one.
All right, man. Let's get right into this here. As I said off the top of the show, I mean, the Leafs kind of stink, honestly. Like when you look at all the numbers, it's not good. Again, I know they're 11-6-3. And they're in a playoff spot right now, at least at the time of recording this podcast. There are a few games going on in the NHL tonight. But, you just go across the board, like 14th in goals per game, 21st in goals against per game, 15th in goal differential, 25th in shots against per game, 20th in expected goals for percentage. Lepore, they have a -3 goal differential at 5-on-5. 18th in 5-on-5 save percentage, 21st in 5-on-5 goals against per 60 minutes, 24th in 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. It's like, just go down the list. I can list off every stat of the book. They seem to be, average to bottom half of the league in pretty much every major stat that you look at.
Yeah.
So despite their record, the underlying numbers suggest this team is just not very good. And I think we know the way to fix it. I mean, they need the blue line to get healthy. They might have to make a move and upgrade the blue line, pick up another defenseman. But the core four are also struggling right now as well. Like, it has not been pretty for Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and even Nylander, who's been incredible all year, but the guy has 0 points in his last 3 games.
Yeah.
Marner and Matthews 2 points in his last 7. Marner 3 points in his last 8. Tavares 1 point in his last 4. So, I mean, pick whatever you want to talk about, Lepore, because it seems like there's a lot of issues with this team right now.
Yeah. First things first, I think the Leafs have been victim to some unfortunate timing, and I'm not giving an excuse here for the way they're playing, but what was the rant at the beginning of the season, Bruno? It was that we were getting all our goals from the big four. Tavares, Nylander, Marner, and Matthews were putting up a lot of points, and we were all shouting, oh my God, this team has no depth. We have no depth scoring. What are we going to do? And now it's flipped. The core four have gone quiet, and then Gregor is scoring goals. Like Reeves scored against Chicago. Yarncroc scored against Chicago, didn't he? So I think it's just a matter of hopefully getting to a spot where the entire forward group is meshing together and firing on all cylinders. Easier said than done. But the thing that freaks me out the most, Bruno, I watch this team and it's the old saying, what's their identity? It's fair to always ask the question, what is this team's identity? Watching the game last night, I've had a chance to watch Florida a few times this season already. And I got to say, like, you were more bullish on Florida than I was in the preseason. But I'll say it, they're better than they were last year. That is a team that is a cohesive unit. Paul Maurice has something in place. And they absolutely have an identity. They have 4 lines that come at you and they play mean and they're aggressive. And I'll say it again, like I watched their game against the Sens the other day, and a team like that is a Sens' worst nightmare. Because like, what's the knock on the Sens this season? Oh, they have no organization defensively. They're very erratic, big mistakes. A team like Florida is going to fucking kill you if you're that team. But with the Leafs, I don't know. And people always say, do you say this team has an identity because they're good or vice versa? Like, oh, it's easy to say they have an identity if they're good, but the Leafs to me are just a team that's getting by because, and not that they're scoring lately, but because they have talent and apparently they're good at shootouts and overtime. And should we take some satisfaction, Bruno, on the fact that they're in every game and that they're getting to overtime? Like I've seen comparisons like, oh, they have the same amount of regulation wins as San Jose. True. But we're getting overtime a hell of a lot more than San Jose is.
Yeah, it's definitely good that they're still winning these games, because it would be a code red situation if, let's say, they had lost half of these overtime and shootout games and they're sitting, I don't know, 4 or 5 points out of a playoff spot or something like that. It would be code red, Leaf fans ready to burn down the city, ready to fire everyone in the front office, ready to fire Sheldon Keefe and the coaching staff. So it is a positive that they're still winning these close games. But man, I told you, I went over those underlying numbers. Like, it's just not pretty. They're not controlling play. They don't have an identity, as you said. I completely agree with that. The goaltending has been shaky as well. I mean, Joseph Woll played great against the Florida Panthers the other night.
Fantastic.
But overall, the goaltending has not been great. They have all these injuries on the blue line. I mean, how many more Marlies can they call up to give them a shot on the blue line? Like Connor Timmins against Florida, as much as we were all excited about him heading into the season, he looked great in the preseason. We thought he was going to take that next step. I thought he was abysmal against
Florida. Turnover machine. The guy couldn't
make a pass, turning the puck over, as you said. And Florida just, quite frankly, looked like the better team.
Yeah.
They looked like, especially that first period, that was an embarrassing first period from the Leafs. Like, they got run the hell over by Florida in the first period.
Whoa.
And I'm glad that Sheldon Keefe blew a gasket behind the bench, because it's about time. Like, this team has to wake the hell up. And sure, they played better as the game went on, but my goodness, man, I think it was really eye-opening to see the Leafs go up against a team like that, a team that, I'll say it, I'll pump my own tires. I was very bullish on the Florida Panthers heading into the season, and they look like one of the best teams in the NHL right now.
Yeah, see, the difference that was obvious last night was I found Toronto just so poor with their decisions with the puck. It was always the wrong play, giving it to the guy who's already kind of tied up and out of space, or it's a weak backhand flip pass that gets picked off. Whereas you looked at Florida, they were so fundamentally sound, getting the puck up ice, getting the puck out, getting the puck on net in the offensive zone, making the right play, the right guy circling around, the guy with the puck getting it to him. So that's exactly it, man. And the Leafs, and this is a bad sign, there's so many things we could point to. We could say, okay, they lack depth. We could say that the top end guys are not pulling their weight. I mean, it's all about math. Like I did the quick math on Matthews with regard to his goals earlier today. I think he's on pace for 57 goals. So it's based on his start.
Feel like it.
Yeah, he was going to cool down, and even Nylander now. And this is not wishful thinking based on the contract situation, but like, he's not going to put up like 120, 130 points. He was going to cool down. Marner got hot for a bit too. He had that back-to-back games with 4 points. So I just think everything's adjusting, but we can still point to the big guys. We can point to the guys down the lineup. The goaltending hasn't been good. And like I said, they don't appear to have an identity. So is that on the coach? Is that on the GM who brought or did not bring guys in? I don't know, but Leafs fans, I mean, no Leafs fan is happy right now. And with the record they have, you'd think, oh, okay, good, whatever start to the season. Like the record's what we expected. Because even the Leafs always don't start at their best. But in terms of the product on the ice, it sucks. And that's what I'll really point to. They're boring.
Yeah, they're really not fun to watch.
No.
Especially when the big guys aren't playing well. Like this team is just brutal to watch, quite honestly.
And you touched on it hard. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, saying they're chasing every game. Every game, you're just kind of waiting for a team to score, and you just hope they do that Toronto Maple Leafs thing where they come 100 miles an hour in the third period and can hopefully get a point out of this. But I can't think of a game this year where they genuinely looked good. It's tough. I will say,
I agree. It is hard. Like I can't even rack my brain and pinpoint like a specific game where from beginning to end they controlled play and just look like the more dominant team.
What's their biggest win this year? We'll have to look that up. Like
they beat the Canucks, didn't they? Am I going crazy?
I think they did beat the Canucks. I remember. Yeah, they did. They went off that night. They went off in the third period.
That might be the most impressive win just based on where the Canucks are right now in the standings. They also beat the Red Wings. I'm going to go through their schedule now. They beat Tampa in OT.
They beat the Capitals 4-1, and they beat the Canucks 5-2.
And they also beat Dallas 4-1. That's pretty impressive as well. So there have been a few impressive victories.
We're hard on the Leafs.
one by one through it all, but
it's been a while.
It just hasn't been pretty this year. Like I miss the days where we would look at Money Puck and it showed the deserve to win a meter like 67% in favor of the Maple Leafs. Merry Ballsmas from our friends over at MANSCAPED. The holidays are approaching, but what if I told you that the celebrations are starting early this year? It turns out the perfect gift does exist, and who else to bring it down your chimney than the leaders in below the waist grooming? Keep calm and let your balls jingle this season with Manscaped's brand new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra featuring the new Lawnmower 5.0. Watch all your wishes come true. Look nice when you're going naughty by going to manscaped.com and using our code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, there's no better time of year than right now to purchase some Manscaped products.
It's always a good time to purchase Manscaped products, Anthony Bruno, but now, especially the holidays, it is the absolute best time, gentlemen out there. The only hairy thing you want to see during Christmas is Santa's beard. So keep clean below the waistline. And to do that, head to manscaped.com, promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
You know what to do, gentlemen. That is 20% off and free shipping using our code GFP20 at manscaped.com. Go to manscaped.com and use our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Happy holidays. But one question I have, Lepore, is do you think this team is soft? Because
yes,
I do too. And here's the thing. I'm getting so frustrated by the people like waiting for Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Tavares to play mean for Matthews to use his 6'3", 220-pound frame. The reason I'm so angry at the people who are saying these things is because these guys are what they are. Yeah. Matthews, Marner, and Nylander have been in the league for 7 years. I believe they're all on year 8. John Tavares is now, a 12-year veteran? These guys are what they are. And it's unfortunate because, think about the Florida Panthers for a second, right? We all think of them as, the most physical team, one of the meanest teams in the league, great forechecking team. Arguably their best player, you might say it's Matthew Tkachuk, but arguably their best player is Barkov. Barkov's honestly pretty soft. If you compare him to Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, he's kind of in that same tier in terms of, this guy's not throwing his weight around. He doesn't play mean, but all it takes is one or two guys, a part of that core group. You need one or two of those guys, especially in your core leadership group among the 3 to 5 best players on your team. And they have that obviously in Matthew Tkachuk. Now, Sam Bennett, I'm not sure he's a top 5 player on the Panthers, but he's one of their top 7 or 8 players.
Yeah, for Higgy's kind of ratty.
Same with Brandon Montour. He's not going out there he's not like Scott Stevens or anything, but he plays like a hard game, and he's a really good offensive player as well. You need a few of those guys among your top guys. And the problem with the Leafs is that they're, I don't know, the hardest guy to play against. Like, is Tyler Bertuzzi even like that hard to play against? No. Max Domi, he's not one of the top 6 to 7 players on this team. Ryan Reeves certainly isn't. So when your top guys are pretty soft, it's hard to change the identity. And I think we're all learning that very quickly here.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, Bruno. I mean, every team's got their handful of solid, skilled players, but it'd be fun to break down that core of every team and say, you know what, like, who's got some grit in their talent. One thing I would like to see, Bruno, and this could be a talking point for Leafs fans, John Tavares. Okay, everyone who listens to this show knows I love John Tavares. So the take for every Leafs fan is this: John Tavares is an excellent player. He just makes a little bit too much money, right? We're all grateful to have John Tavares. We just wish at this point it wasn't an $11 million price tag, right? I want to see Tavares fight. He's a big, strong guy. And again, we talk about, there's a big talking point earlier in this season was how trash the Leafs crowd is. Okay. Even the average fan who was given a ticket by their boss, if they're at a game and a hit is laid by the other team and Captain John Tavares goes in and starts throwing punches, everyone's going nuts. And think how much more excited Leafs fans would be for a situation like that. We'd be full of joy. And he's a big dude. He's a strong dude. I wouldn't fight John Tavares. Are you crazy? So I'm not saying I want him to go out there and be a dummy, but I'd like him to bring that. And again, being the captain, come on, man. Like we say about the Toronto Maple Leafs all the time, it's a white collar city. It's a white collar crowd, but the fan base for the most part is very blue collar. Like this team, most people I'm sure who listen to this show fell in love with the guys like Gary Roberts and Green and Tucker and Domi. Man, those teams were mean. That's Toronto, man. So you said it. The big guys are not pulling their weight physically. They're not going to, because you touched on it. That is who they are. And I hate when people say that. You always hear that about defensemen. Oh, he doesn't play to his body. He's got to use his. Well, that's not who he is. He can't just program himself.
When you've been playing like that since you were a kid, essentially, right, you're not just going to reprogram yourself at the age of 25 or 30 when you're in the NHL. That's why I'm sorry to break it to you. I love what you said about Tavares, and I'd love to see him show some more nastiness, and I'd like to see him fight, but it's just never going to happen, Lepore. Sorry to break it to you. Literally, it will never happen.
And another thing we can talk about, asking the question, these guys aren't going to drop the gloves or like lay huge hits, but the big thing, and let's talk about the Leafs in the playoffs, man, I remember going back watching Vegas. If there was one word I could give that team, was intensity. That team plays with a lot of intensity, and that's not a thing you can program, right? Of the big guys on the Leafs, you know who I'll say? I'll say Riley can play with some intensity.
Yeah, Riley, playoff Morgan Riley, he's built different. Like I honestly thought last year, like he was the engine of the team. And Nylander, listen,
if we win the cup.
Nylander was fantastic in the playoffs, but Riley, not only was he excellent just in terms of his play, but his intensity, his passion, like you could just see it written all over his face and his body language. Like that dude was ready to do anything to get that team through the playoffs. And you just don't see that with the other top guys. Like, even things as little as like when there's a scrum, can Matthews like get in there and just not like, I don't know, smile and act like he doesn't care? And that's the thing. I just don't think that stuff is going to change. As much as I love Austin Matthews, we all love Austin Matthews. He's going to score 50 to 60 goals this year. He's just not wired like that. And neither is Mitch Marner, and neither is William Nylander. So, if the Leafs have to face a team like Florida in the playoffs, I mean, would anyone take the Leafs right now to beat Florida in a 7-game series?
Right now, not even close.
There's no chance.
Probably wouldn't even watch. But so what do they do, Bruno? We gotta remold this team. Hopefully we can fill some of that Klingberg money. I mean, is it another trade? They got to get better. Like I went on rants last season calling this team as well as they were playing and the points pace they were on. I called them a pretender. I'm like, this team is not a legit contender. They are a pretender, but I was quick to say, we'll see what they look like after the deadline. And they added guys. And not that I was full blown, this team's going all the way, but I was happy with what I saw. So I'll stick to my guns. I'll make my full assessment of this team after the trade deadline, but they have some work to do. They have some work to do. Like if last night was a measuring stick, we did not pass. Absolutely not. And it's funny how we got the 2 points, but
yeah, it's crazy that the Leafs won the game and we're saying that they didn't look nearly as good as Florida. And it's true. I mean, they got 2 goals from Noah. I mean, 2 goals. Noah Gregor, if I could say his name properly, scored in regulation and then scored a pretty sweet winner in the shootout. Yeah, I mean, you better not lose the Noah Gregor game when your 4th line player is playing like that. I mean, you got to win that game. So I'm glad they got the win, but my goodness, did they not look nearly as good as the Florida Panthers? And I think the way you fix this, Brad Treliving's been harping on this. Like he's clearly going to upgrade the blue line with the injury now to Mark Giordano. Yeah. He's got a hand injury. Who knows how long he's going to be out. Liljegren is still out of the lineup. You got to think he's going to pick up one of these D-men. And I mean, it's been no secret at all that the Leafs are interested in one of these Calgary defensemen, whether it's Zadorov, Tanev, Noah Hannafin, which isn't as realistic because you're probably just going to have to give up more to get him. And I don't know how the Leafs, could possibly re-sign a guy like that. But I mean, that'll help them a little bit. But at the end of the day, man, you go back to the last 4 playoff runs, however long you want to go back, this team has had trouble scoring in high leverage situations. And you're seeing it now, like when the big 4 are not putting the puck in the net, this team stinks. And that's happened in the playoffs multiple times. Marner's had his dry spells. Matthews has had his dry spells in the playoffs. Same with Tavares. The only guy who's been fairly consistent has been Nylander. So when these guys aren't playing well in the playoffs, and think about it, you're paying these guys to play well in the playoffs.
I was going to say, Bruno, it's $40 million. If $40 million of your team isn't pulling their weight, you ain't going to win.
Yeah, you're fucked. Especially the way that this team is built. Those guys need to perform in the playoffs. And listen, it's not like every other team is like built completely different and they don't pay all their top guys big money. Like there are several teams across the league that pay their top guys big money. Maybe it's not structured quite like the Leafs salary cap is structured, but you said it, man. When literally half of your cap is not pulling its weight in the playoffs, you're fucked. And that's just the reality of the situation. So honestly, I don't think anything's going to change really. And we've talked about this before until maybe you get rid of someone on the core 4 and use that salary to bolster the roster in other places.
I don't know. Honestly, now more than ever, I think I can't see any of the 4 leaving. I know like Matthews just signed and we all expect Tavares to re-sign, but as far as Marner and Nylander go, I'm just kind of assuming, and maybe I'm going to be wrong, and I'm hoping for either side of the card here, but the way I feel right now, I'm like, yeah, Marner's going to re-sign, Nylander's going to re-sign, we're going to keep going, and we've talked about how hopefully Tavares will take a pay cut, and then we can see what we can do with that money. But Bruno, before we move on, okay, the shootout, Okay. I mentioned before how much I love John Tavares. Okay. I also love Wee Willie Nylander. Okay. With all my heart. I love William Nylander. Okay. His penalty shot. And he does this all the time. Penalty shots, breakaways. He rarely scores because he goes in, and here's Coach Michael Lepore talking, who coaches 11-year-olds. Go back and watch his deke from last night.
Future NHL head coach, Michael.
Yes. Maybe AHL, Bruno. We'll slow down a little bit.
ECHL even.
Yeah, Swedish Elite League, something like that. So he comes in, right? Number 1, his hands are in front. He's got the puck in front of him, okay? I always tell the kids I coach, if the puck is in between your feet and it's in front of you, can you shoot from there? No, you can't. You can't shoot from there. So then the goalie knows you're going to deke. It's a natural reaction to drop back, spread out. You're going to deke. Number one, he does that far too often. Number two, and you saw in the move last night, he had the puck in front and he did this kind of half move to the backhand. So number one, you cannot have the puck in front of you. Okay. It can be in front of you and then you have to pull it for a shot and then do something. But number two, you really have to sell a move. Like you saw with Matthews, he cut to his right to open the goalie up and slid it in. Right. Marner made a hard cut to his right and fell. But again, at least he opened things up. Nylander always goes in straight, puck in front of him, half move, and it's easy for the goalie. And it's one of those ones where like he's on the breakaway and I'm not even excited. Because like I can see, yeah, the puck's in front of him and he's gonna do that like kind of half, and he goes to the backhand a lot too. And I feel like it doesn't work very often. And I know I'm talking about a National Hockey League player with incredible talent, but it's just one of those fundamental things that drives me nuts. And it's not just Nylander. I see it all the time in the National Hockey League. Like I'll be watching penalty shots and the guy's going in out loud. He ain't going to score because the puck's out here. Goalie knows what you're doing most of the time anyway. And even with the puck in front of you, some of these guys can pull incredible moves from there. And even if the goalie does know they're deking, they'll still score. But why even put that on the table? Next part in the shootout. Okay. The reversal that was called.
Oh, the double tap on Evan Rodriguez.
Now we all know, I think here, like, and I was laughing. He was like, oh, it's Toronto. Yeah. Okay. Like, no, that's the rule. That is the rule.
That was called as it should have been called. It was a good call by the refs.
100%. It was a good call. And of course, everyone chirping on Twitter after the game. Oh, it's the Leafs, whatever. People were quick to throw out the stats of like the last 5 to 10 years. The Leafs never get power plays. They're at the bottom of the league all the time in power plays. So if the league's trying to help the Leafs out, they're not doing a very good job. But I like Maurice's comments after the game. Well, like I forget what the exact wording was, but it's something along the lines of, it's a good thing we have rules. Okay. And that's the rule. And is it one of those things where kind of like a lot of people don't like the offside review because the whole thing of, okay, if you're like an inch offside or like your foot just hasn't come out or whatever, that it's fine. It's sports. It should count. Does this fall into that category? Or are you okay? Are you okay? Like, no, that's full stop, not a goal. Beyond the rules, like that should not be a goal.
No, I completely agree that shouldn't be a goal because you essentially have two cracks at scoring on a penalty shot. And I know it's not like he's like recocking and shooting again, but the puck clearly bounced off Wall's pad, hit off Rodriguez's stick, and then went in the net. I thought it was a great call. And on that note, Paul Maurice, are we sure he's not full Italian? Because that guy complains more than any other coach I think I've ever seen.
And he wasn't like that in Toronto.
Like, I like Paul Maurice. I think he's smart. I think he's entertaining. But for the love of God, shut up with the complaining. That's all he does is complain. He complains about shit for the sake of complaining about it. Yeah. Like, a lot of the calls, like, think back to the playoffs last year when he had, like, what was it, the 5 on his chest? But the number of power plays that the Leafs got in game 1. And then lo and behold, Florida was getting all the power plays the rest of the series. Like this call, the Evan Rodriguez double tap, it was the correct call. Go back to last year's playoffs when the Panthers knocked out the Leafs in the second round. Radko Gudas was holding Calle Jarnkrok's stick on the OT winner to knock out the Leafs in game 5. Where was Paul Maurice then? So he needs to shut the hell up because all he does is complain, and it's starting to piss me off now. All right, Paul, I know he's not going to listen to this, but he is the biggest complainer, and he's starting to piss me off.
We'd have him back in Toronto, though, right, Bruno?
Yeah, I think we would.
I take Paul Maurice, so I'm okay with it.
I think we'd definitely have him back in Toronto. Also, Lepore, I'm glad you brought up that point about Nylander because I don't think there's a player in the league who misses as many breakaways as William Nylander. A player who's that skilled. Like that's what's so incredible about it. Like remember Mikheyev, how hilarious, over the net every time, just brutal. And Mikheyev's semi-skilled, but like what you expect from Nylander. I'd love to see does somebody track that? Breakaways. I would love to see a stat because it feels like he gets at least one breakaway a game and literally misses every single one.
Yeah, I know for a while, like someone did do the math and it was Athanasiou and Formanton wherever he's playing now, who miss a lot of breakaways, who get a lot of breakaways and miss a lot of breakaways. Where Nylander was on the list, I don't know, but hey, someone look it up, send it to us. I'd love to go over it.
If Nylander scored on half of his breakaways, he'd be like a 60-goal scorer. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on now.
Yeah.
To Corey Perry, because this is a very interesting situation, very juicy, especially because of all the rumors floating around social media.
What rumors?
Yeah, what rumors? They only went viral over the last like 3 days.
Yeah.
But just a crazy situation. The Blackhawks placed him on unconditional waivers and terminated his contract. So here is the statement from the Blackhawks. I just want to lay the foundation.
Bruno came ready.
So here is what the Blackhawks said when they placed him on unconditional waivers to terminate his contract. They said, after an internal investigation, the Chicago Blackhawks have determined that Corey Perry has engaged in conduct that is unacceptable and in violation of both the terms of his standard players contract and the Blackhawks' internal policies intended to promote professional and safe work environments. And then Kyle Davidson, Hawks GM, had to come out and squash all the rumors that were going on about Corey Perry and Connor Bedard's mom. And it was out of control. Okay, completely out of control. But he came out and said, this does not involve any players or their families, and anything that suggests otherwise or anyone that suggests otherwise is wildly inaccurate. And frankly, it's disgusting. Yeah. He didn't say disgusting like that. I kind of, juiced that up a little bit. But anyway, this reminds me of the situation for anyone who follows basketball. When the Boston Celtics suspended Ime Udoka for the entire season for essentially having an inappropriate relationship with a Celtics staff member, a female Celtics staff member. Right. And even though apparently the whole thing was consensual, this staff member also came out and said that there was like unwarranted verbal abuse or something like that was coming from him. So it was just like a bad situation. They suspended him for the year. So when I saw that, this statement from the Blackhawks and I saw what Kyle Davidson said, I immediately thought about the Ime Udoka situation. Like, we don't know what happened yet with Corey Perry, and maybe Lepore, by the time we release this podcast, we're going to know. But it seems like, there was some bad shit that went on within the organization. I don't know who was involved. We don't know who was involved yet, but that's what it smells like to me, that this was so bad that they just said, all right, buddy, you're gone. You're Corey Perry. You're a potential Hall of Famer. You've played 19 years in the league. We just signed you to a 1-year, $4 million contract to mentor Connor Bedard, but you're out of here, pal. So what's your whole take on this situation?
First of all, did you see Frank Saravalli? He was on a podcast, the Daily Faceoff podcast, I think. And right off the bat, he starts out by saying, guys, I rarely swear on podcasts, but the Bedard story is fucking bullshit, is how we put it. So, I mean, take that how you want, but he was very quick, someone who's connected, to say that. As far as it goes with Perry, we try our best to analyze this situation without knowing very much, because one thing that has creeped into my mind is that we all know what the Blackhawks have been through with regard to, we'll call it their public relations. Like, they have not looked good. They have done some terrible, terrible things as an organization, and it's ugly. Okay. It's a bad look. So I wonder, and I'm not saying Perry didn't do anything too bad, but was it something that may, under normal circumstances, been pushed aside or pushed under the rug, but the Chicago Blackhawks just can't have another story come out? So they were like, no, we're taking care of business. This is done.
Definitely possible.
Yeah, but like for him to say it didn't involve another player. So my mind went where your mind went, Bruno. It was another employee. Even something like, was it sexual harassment? Like something like that. Who knows? We're all guessing. Perry's married with kids, correct?
I don't actually know like his family situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the guy's like, what, 36, 37 now?
Yeah. I'm picturing his wife when they lost to Colorado. I'm picturing his wife crying. Like, they put the camera on his wife and she was like weeping in the stands after the loss. So there's not much to say, Bruno. I mean, those rumors went around, And maybe I was in the minority here, but I saw those. Of course, everyone's eyes widened, I should say, when they saw that story. But I was hoping it wasn't true. I really was. I mean, can you imagine for this kid to have to deal with something like that, just entering the National Hockey League? And this is a hypothetical because deep down, I really don't think that was the case. But I was just really hoping that story wasn't true.
If it was true, that would have been a complete shit show.
Yeah, and I will say, man, the NHL, I don't know if this is on the NHL or this is on the Blackhawks. You would have thought something would have come out quicker, like some sort of statement. Like once that rumor's going around, immediately, like this guy's like the future of our league, and he's a meme on the internet right now. We need to squash this. We need to put this to bed. And I don't know. I didn't see it. And you know what? I would have liked for the NHL to come out and do something because it is their brand. This kid's going to be a star. So like take some initiative with it. Like I found that pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I think sooner rather than later, we're going to find out what actually happened here because
you think?
I think there's reporters around the league. There are connected insiders who probably have the story and they might just be sitting on it right now. They haven't released it yet. I think there are people who know what happened. It's just a matter of this information becoming public knowledge. That's the way that I see it right now. I think it had something to do with a member of the Chicago Blackhawks staff. I don't know if it's someone from the coaching staff in the organization and player development, player personnel, whatever the heck it is. Something terrible must have happened, and especially with everything that went down with that team, the whole Kyle Beach situation, like that team, some of the shit that they swept under the rug was so pathetic and disgusting, honestly. Yeah. So I think, when this happened, whatever it is, however bad it is, they had to get out in front of this and they had to get rid of Corey Perry. It must have been that bad. Like for them to do this again, to who I said, Corey Perry, like 19 years in the league, he's won a Stanley Cup. He's won a Hart Trophy. He's won a gold medal for Team Canada. Like, this isn't just some Joe Blow NHL player who's been in the league for like 2 years and he's like a borderline minor league player. It's Corey Perry. And I know he's now 38 years old, but this must have been real bad for them to do what they did.
Not even a suspension. Think of that. Oh, he can fake an injury or something and they say he's suspended, something along those lines. But I'd like to know the process of how this works as far as the termination of the contract goes, because then I would think, well, the union has to be involved in this for them to terminate a player's contract.
100%.
And then for it to happen as quickly as it happened. I mean, I guess we don't know exactly when this incident happened, but I think we can assume it was it happened recently and it was a pretty quick process for them to get where they are. But then again, I think, well, man, like I said before, maybe it wasn't something too bad. It was just the matter of the Blackhawks being really sensitive because of their past and they're entitled to do that. But then I see from that side where if the union was on board and they were okay with it and it happened this quickly, wow, it must have been really fucking bad what he did. And yeah, his agent came out with a statement. What did he say? Something with his family. He's with his family right now. It's dealing with something with his family. I don't know.
It's
maybe it's shut.
Who knows what's going to happen here. And I still want to talk about this, even though it's early to talk about this, because we don't know what Corey Perry did, the extent of this, how bad it is. Like, he might be shunned from the NHL and he might not get another opportunity. But let's say it's not as bad as maybe we all think. Maybe he gets another opportunity. Like, do you think there's going to be teams lined up to sign him? If everything checks out, the union gets involved, they find out it was a bad situation, but maybe not like an unforgivable situation where like he's never going to play again. Because I think there's going to be teams lined up to get this guy if that's the case. I know, I might be insensitive and sound, kind of crazy saying this right now, but there are going to be a lot of teams lined up for Corey Perry if this all works out in his favor.
Yeah, we just called our loser favorite hockey team soft. So whatever it takes to win, man. But it's tough, Bruno, because like think of what you just said. If it turns out that it's something not too egregious, well, would he have been kicked off the team for something that's not too egregious? And then what would your policy be? I'll ask you, Bruno. You are the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and let's say there was an incident with a staffer, okay, an unforgivable incident. Would you give it a go?
I would have done the same thing as the Blackhawks if that
But
was my team policy.
No, I'm saying if you're the new team, would you take him?
Would I take him? It all depends. It all depends how egregious this was, because if what happened is what I think would happen, that he like something bad went down with a member of the organization, then he's fucked. Like he's not getting another job, in my opinion. But yeah, if everything checks out and maybe it's not quite as terrible as we think right now, I might consider giving him another opportunity, especially if I'm a desperate team like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Desperate, yeah. I think, honestly, I've said before, I said during many off seasons that I was hoping Corey Perry would sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. In this situation, I mean, I could say a joke and be like, yeah, I want Perry to don the blue and white. But I think if he does sign with someone, if someone does give him an opportunity, it's going to be a team that no one really gives a shit about from a fan base perspective. It can't be a Canadian team. Can you imagine? Like, can you imagine we don't really find out what happened? And then we wake up, Corey Perry is signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, even the team, like Tavares, Riley, the vets, they have to answer questions about it and be politically correct. Keefe's got to answer questions. Treliving's going to have to answer questions. It would be rough, man.
Yeah,
it would be a lot.
Shitstorm that would create.
Yeah.
Would not be worth it whatsoever. Again, that's assuming like all the information doesn't come out, which I don't think is going to happen. I think all the information will come out and we're all going to, know once and for all what exactly happened here and the extent of how terrible this was or wasn't, for that matter. But until that happens, who the hell knows? That's why it's so hard to speculate about this. Like, oh, should the Leafs sign Corey Perry? Should, I don't know, the Vegas Golden Knights sign Corey Perry?
Fuck, the Knights will do it, eh? Oh my God.
You know what? Another team that he fits perfectly with is the Florida Panthers. That's another team. Imagine the Panthers get Corey Perry, goes back to Florida, but this time as a member
which
of
one?
The Cats.
You know which one I was thinking, actually? And to my point, you mentioned Florida, but to my point about a team that's not that popular, Carolina.
Yeah. They need a guy like that because they're kind of soft too, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe Detroit now. I mean, they got Patrick Kane. They go full blown, go for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios, but yeah, it's like we can't really. I mean, we could spitball all we want, and we could talk about him, playing on the Leafs' fourth line and being a great contributor in the playoffs. But we don't know how terrible this was. Like, he legit might be out of the league in the next 24 hours, depending on what he did. So we're gonna have to wait and see.
You have to bet your life. You have to bet your life. Does Corey Perry play another game in the National Hockey League?
I'm going to say, honestly, it's like 60-40, 60% to no right now. Like, I think this is going to be tough to come back from because it was already hard for this guy. Like, when he leaves the Ducks and he goes to Dallas and he kept signing like these veteran minimum contracts, and then he got the bag from Chicago.
Yeah, which made no sense.
But it's been tough for this guy. He's 38 years old. Man. So it's like, what I'm trying to say is, like, before this happened, he was already kind of like on his last legs here. Even though he always performs in the playoffs. I don't know what it is, but that guy will have like a garbage regular season, and then the playoffs come around and all of a sudden he's phenomenal again, like always happens when he plays the Leafs. But yeah, I'm going to say 60-40. No, he does not play another game. What do you think?
I think he plays.
You think he plays?
Yeah, because I think there's going to be teams like once you said Vegas, I was like, fuck. Because Vegas just won't care. And maybe that's a criticism to them, but they're the champs and they've shown that the only thing that matters to them is winning, which it should. So, or which I'm okay with, I should say. So that wouldn't shock me. And then you mentioned Florida. If he goes to Florida, it's a story for one day. Seriously.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think we see Corey Perry play again.
Wow. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to chat about when it comes to Corey Perry, or should we move on?
I wish we knew more.
Topic.
I wish we knew more, man. That's it. And you think we'll find out more? Like, you think we'll?
I think we
actually find
will.
out?
I think there's multiple reporters out there. I don't know how many, but I think people are kind of sitting on this, and maybe they don't know the whole story, but they have a pretty good idea of what happened, and it's just a matter of like getting it out there and publishing it for people to see.
They may wait. They may wait to see if he signs with somebody. Because let's say he does sign with someone and then you come out with the story, that's brutal.
Yeah, that would be a disaster. That's why the smart teams are not going to jump the gun here and try and sign him without knowing the full extent of what he actually did. And it seems like it's pretty terrible. So we'll wait and see. And like I said, maybe by the time we post this podcast, we're already going to know what happened with Corey Perry. Yeah. But before we close out the show, we got to chat a little bit about Patrick Kane signing with the Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
This has been like one of the big stories throughout the first quarter of the season because Kane has just been rehabbing his hip injury. He was rehabbing the hip injury in Toronto, by the way, and that's why people got a little bit excited thinking that he might sign with the Leafs, but he ended up signing a 1-year, $2.75 million deal with the Red Wings. And the Red Wings right now, as of recording this podcast, are third in the Atlantic Division. They have the exact same record as the Leafs, but they have a way better goal differential. They have double the amount of regulation wins as the Leafs. You know, Detroit was seen as like a team on the upswing here, but they're not viewed as like a Stanley Cup contender or a true contender for that matter. So what do you make of this Kane signing with the Red Wings? Like, does this put them over the top? Because I don't think it does, but I think he still has some left in the tank. Like, this dude had 54 points, I want to say. I have it written down here. 57 points in 73 games with the Blackhawks and Rangers last season. And the year before that, 92 points in 21-22. So, like, he can still produce, even though he's coming off this hip injury. I just don't know that this really moves the needle that much.
Yeah, I think it's... First things first, I think it's pretty cool how many NHL players have played for 3 teams, and all 3 were original 6 teams.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. So who's he got left in the States? He's got Boston. He never played for Boston. So, you know what? Props to the Wings, man. Here's this team. The whole summer, what was the story about the Atlantic with the up-and-comers? I think for the most part, it was, who's it going to be? Ottawa and Buffalo. Buffalo and Ottawa. Who... Is it going to be one of them or both of them? Are they going to emerge as teams that are going to compete for a playoff spot and maybe make the playoffs and maybe make some damage? But Detroit was always kind of in the background. And I think a lot of people thought, yeah, Detroit's young and they're getting better. But I don't think anyone was really and truly taking the Red Wings too seriously at the start of this season. But they have the record they have. Now they added Patrick Kane. Detroit's a place guys want to play, man. I mean, it's a great ownership group. It's a new building. The city of Detroit is the butt of a lot of jokes, but there's been a lot of development in that city and it's been modernized and shrunk a little bit. So I've heard good things. If it puts them over the edge, no, but it makes them better. And it's one of those things. I'm going to make more of a point to watch the Red Wings now, to see what Patrick Kane's going to do. It's going to be fun, man. I am a little shocked. And I guess it's a matter of who's interested. I kind of had the feeling he was going to go cup chasing. And that's not a shot at the Red Wings. They've shown us they're a good team this year and he makes them better. And who knows what they'll do between now and the trade deadline. But I kind of thought he was going to do something full blown cup chasing. Like it was going to be Vegas or, you know what, even the Rangers. So again, but maybe they weren't interested. Who knows, man?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Rangers just saw that last year he didn't have quite the impact they thought he would have on their team, right? And that's what I think. I think a lot of the contenders around the league thought, okay, he's coming off this hip injury. Yes, he's still a very good offensive player, but do we really want to throw this guy into the mix when he's kind of like essentially almost a negative defensively? And I'd have to look at his stats, but I don't think he's bringing anything on the defensive side of the puck. So you're bringing him in, you're hoping that he's like 85% of himself and could have a season similar to last year where he had 57 points in 73 games. And obviously he's already missed a quarter of the season, but I just felt like the contenders were like, I don't know if this guy's really moving the needle much. I think it's actually a nice fit in Detroit because this team is right on the cusp of the playoffs. Like, do you think they're going to make the playoffs? It's going to be real close.
It's going to be close, yeah.
I think they probably end up as a wild card team, man, the way things are shaking out right now.
Yeah. Well, the thing is now, too, Bruno, for them to go after Patrick Kane, they're going for it. So they want to make the playoffs. So expect another move.
Yeah, I still think they're going to be a bubble team because right now, again, they're third in the Atlantic. The Leafs are tied with them, same amount of games played. The Lightning are also tied, but actually Detroit has 3 games in hand on the Lightning. But the teams you got to look at, like New Jersey, who has gotten off to a slow start. If they can figure out their goaltending, you got to think they're going to creep up the standings. You know, then you have the Sabres and the Islanders. So I think it's going to come down to the wire with Detroit. But honestly, right now, if I were to bet, I would say that they get in. And maybe it's by the skin of their teeth, but I think they can get into one of those final wildcard spots because your second favorite team, the Ottawa Senators, look like a complete joke. Dead last in the Eastern Conference. Everyone thought that the Senators would be in this spot right now. Third in the Atlantic Division. Instead,
getting Patrick Kane.
Instead, they absolutely stink again, but we'll save that for the next podcast.
Sure. Yeah. It's pretty cool, eh? Leafs and Red Wings, first round. Shades of 93. Be pretty sweet, man. Original 6 matchup. It's been a while. I'm trying to think, was that? I guess that's the last time we played them in the playoffs. Because like in the Sundin era, like in that Gilmore Clark era, after that, they didn't play the Wings. And then the Sundin era, we never got to play the Red Wings. So, but no, actually, what am I saying? Yeah, because we moved to the East. Yeah, okay. we the Leafs were in the West, and then Detroit stayed in the West, and then now they've come over to join us. So yeah, forget about what I just said because it was virtually an impossibility.
So it was long overdue, man. Leafs, Red Wings.
That'd be awesome.
First round. The 2 and 3 seeds in the Atlantic Division.
Oh, I was thinking more
Boston just falls off the face of the earth and finishes in a wild card spot.
Yeah, I was thinking more Leafs top of the conference and Detroit in the second wild card.
Right now it's 2-3
and we're the 3.
Yeah, the way the Leafs are playing right now, my Lord, it does not look good. But is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
I think I did okay, Bruno. We started the show by saying I wasn't in the best mood because my boys took an L, but I think I did okay. The kids worked hard. I put a positive spin on it, and I'm sure they all went for McDonald's and ice cream after that, so they're all in a good mood. And so if they don't care, why should I, right?
Lepore, I'm proud of you, man. After one of the most devastating losses of your coaching career, even though I know it's probably just a regular season game, and the kids on your team are all happy because they're going for ice cream and doing other things besides hockey. But I know it was still a devastating loss for you, but I am proud of you because you came on this podcast and you delivered today.
I brought it today.
So shout out to you, Michael Lepore.
Thanks.
And soon you're going to be coaching, maybe in the NHL. I know it sounds insane, but don't count out Michael Lepore. I'm telling you guys right now. All right. That is going to do it for episode 125 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Once again, I say this all the time. If you're a new listener, longtime listener, and you really enjoy the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoyed the content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think of our takes on today's podcast, and ring the notification bell while you're at it so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Leafs, figure your shit out. Please. We will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.